receive a cordial greeting. Today with a very interesting video and debuting camera, a gift from my wife to see me more ugly in high definition. But well, the camera is very good. Now yes, there is nothing to do. Then, today we're going to talk about a supremely interesting tool called Nuclei. Is a vulnerability scanner. It's a tool that is a vulnerability scanner. Allows us to detect vulnerabilities and is widely used in bug bounty. Why? Because it is very malleable. You can use many templates that basically are the tools that are used, or the tests that are used in this tool, according to what we want to test worth the redundancy, according to the vulnerabilities that we need to detect. Then Nuclei, as I was saying, is community. I'm going to leave in the description the link or the links of what we're going to use today. Nuclei works based on templates and has an engine, which is, let's say, the core of how it works. The engine invokes the templates, and you can run them against different websites. So, as you can see, the way to start, let's say, the Getting Started Nuclei is very easy to install. In case you don't have it installed, you should have it in your Kali. Otherwise, here you have the installation. It is simply with a Go. Having Go in the machine, you simply need the last version of Go. If you have problems for the installation that you should not have them, then leave me a message in the channel, but in Kali, you will be able to have it. Then, as I mentioned, Nuclei works with templates. You can create your own templates. But let me explain a little bit the topic of the templates so we can see it and know what we are talking about. So, I have here my Kali machine. If I give it a locate of Nuclei, I had already done it. Locate of Nuclei, I will be able to see, for example, where I have the templates. As I was saying, the templates are as if you have used Nessus, a little bit, the plugins, but for Nuclei, they are called templates that are the different tests that he is going to execute. So look, let's go to that path where I'm located. Let's go to Nuclei, templates, and inside Nuclei templates, we will have the possibility to see the different, let's say, directories with the templates. For example, we have of CVs. We are going to look at the folder of CVEs. Then I'm going to go to CVE. And look, when I give it an LS, I have the from 2000 to 2022. Let's look, for example, on 2022. We have, so, look, is each of the CVs with their respective YAML file. These files are each of the templates. I can look at any of them. Let's look at, for example, the last one, last CBE, 2022, 3244, 444. So look, a template consists of the following parameters. Well, you have an ID, which is basically in this case the CBE. You have a name. This in this case is a template that is going to test an open redirect. The author who made this specific template, the severity of the vulnerability, and this is basically connected to the CVSS. If suddenly we're not so clear on what the CVSS is, that means basically is the common vulnerability scoring system. Let's see. Show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. Let's see where I have the Firefox that I did. Got lost in the screens. The Firefox. Here it is. So look, what I mean by CVSS. System. That normally allows us to determine the level or severity of a vulnerability. It stands for Common Vulnerability Scoring System. There are several. We have version 2, 3, 3, 1. Here we have, for example, the calculators. The calculators to determine how serious a vulnerability is. I'm going to leave you this link also in the description. So I'm going to go to the calculator, and we have different calculators. Look, we have version 3, version 2. So we're going to go to the version 3 calculator that we have here. So here it is, look. So how do you measure the criticality of a vulnerability? For example, if the vulnerability can be exploited through the network as a score, you're going to be able to see here, look, it went up to 8.8 here. If the vulnerability, for example, allows me to interact on different networks, not only the network that I compromised, but then I can work on an additional network. Look, 8, if I have that, if I have to be local, etc. So, for example, a vulnerability that can be exploited through the network, that is easy to exploit, that has no complexity, that does not require privileges. I'm going to tell you that it doesn't require privileges. Look how it went up already 9.8. That it requires user interaction. There it goes down a little bit. But to 8, 8 that, according to the scope, for example, are required at a given time. There are several parameters here, for example, the part of privileges, elevation, etc. Here it tells us a vulnerability that exploits and only affects managed resources on the same computer, for example. So that's a change. Here you have change. So you can exploit vulnerabilities not only in the same component, right? Well, or that vulnerability doesn't just impact that component, or it can impact multiple components. Well, the scope, the impact, confidentiality. Here we're talking about the CIA triangle, is basically confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which basically can affect us, for example, confidentiality, and that information can be leaked thanks to that vulnerability, or that information can be altered or modified in some way. Then we would already have an integrity or a high impact on the integrity, or that the availability could be affected. That, for example, a server could be attacked and leave it out of service, a denial of service, for example. So here is going up or down based on these parameters. We have more parameters, like, for example, the temporary score. If there is an exploit, for example, there is a proof of concept or not. For example, then the code of the exploit. Let's say there is a proof of concept that is going to give you a higher level, and so on. Then for each vulnerability, according to if there is already an exploit, according if it is local, if it is remote, etc. So it changes a little bit, the score. This basically is the version 3.1. We also have the calculator for version 3, if you already want to use version 3, where there are certain changes at the parameter level. But we are looking at the version 3.1, that is what we are looking at on the machine. Or let's say in the template that we were analyzing, look, here is the CVSS of version 3.1. Look here, you can see it. The score is 6.1 of that specific vulnerability. Then, well, after the information from CVSS or from the common vulnerabilities and exposure, etc., then we have all the part already of requests or the technical part of the attempt to exploit the vulnerability. So look here, it tells us, well, a GET method is sent. Here is the route. Here it tells us the matchers, how we know if the machine is vulnerable or not. Then, well, the type of response that we would receive. The header is where we would see it. And we would see, for example, information like this, for example. Then, each one of the templates would exploit or try to exploit a different vulnerability. That's what the templates are for. And as you can see, the tool has a lot. There are numerous vulnerabilities. A little more. There are vulnerabilities. Look, let's do an LSLA to see them in a list. Look. Then we have, for example, the CVEs, the CNVD, default login by default DNS. You see, let's take a look at default logins so that we see a little bit more default logins that we have. Look, for example, default logins in, for example. And here we're going to see the different templates. So look, let's take a look at S. Let's take a look at cat. HP. So look, here would basically show us what would put, for example, it would send through a post. Not a get. The other one, I think it was a get. What we were trying to do, well, a post. In the login, let's say in htdocs, login Lua, HTTP 1-to-1, then it would try to place in the host name. Well, place in username and password. Look here. Basically, the username would be admin. That would be the payload. I don't see password here. And here, it talks about the conditions that would tell us if it is vulnerable or not. Just look. I don't see password being placed here. Then, this is how the tool works. And you can test all the templates, and you can create your own templates. If you want to do it, then the parameters for you to create your own templates are here. In this URL, I'll leave them in the description, where you have the templating guide. Then it tells us the details, tells us about the information block. Here we can see the HTTP part, the fusing, etc. Then it becomes very interesting. Obviously, it is important that you understand what is a get, a post, what is the heat part, etc. You need to take advantage of the strength of the tool to understand how a website works and how one communicates with the website. For today, I'm going to show you how the tool works, how we could use it at any given time, versus a site that we could analyze. We're going to scan. We have two potential sites. For example, we have this, which is the Acunetics test site, which is very good, where we could try to do a vulnerability scan of that site. Is there also the Nmap Scan Me? I'm going to work with the Acunetics one, for example. So I'm going to copy this URL. Done. And how do I use the tool? Just, if I'm going to use the tool against a URL, I'm going to tell it. Or, how do I know that? Well, basically, what I have to do is ask for help. As always, look, Nuclei, help, brings me the help of the tool, and I will be able to see here. I will be able to see, let's say, the parameters. You could also invoke the manual, right? As always, here we can see the different parameters. There is a lot of parameterization that we could use. We can generate a specific output. We could use files of different formats, configurations in different ways. For example, redirections, retries, etc. It's quite complete, the tool. Here you have the manual. If you say man nuclei. Well, there is no nuclei manual. I would have to look if there is a nuclei manual. But, well, forget about the manual. We have the help still on the website. There is a lot of information about the tool. Let's see how to use it. Let's tell Nuclei you and the URL we're going to use. The URL that we're going to use to perform our tests, for instance, would be something like this. I can tell it, for example, what templates I want to use. If I don't give it templates, it's going to default to the parameters. So look, it tells us to use it responsibly. Remember, super important, without authorization cannot be used. That is to say, you can't scan a site if you don't have authorization for that, or if it's not created for that. That is to say, it is illegal. If you, for example, pass this tool to a website that does not belong to you and that you do not have authorization in writing as far as possible from the owner of the site for you to test, then look, here it has detected a lot of vulnerabilities of that site. It's a vulnerable site by default, of course. So it tells us that is missing protection on the part of HTTP. It's using HTTP, of course. Look, here he tells us about different vulnerabilities that exist for that site. It's still working. While this is still working, I'm going to show you other alternatives. For example, if I wanted to use only some types of template, for example, those of the CVEs, then what would I have to do? I would have to tell Nuclei minus you again to that site, and I would simply have to tell it minus t and what template I want to use. Then I would have to give it the path. Then the templates, we have them in /home, Kali, Nuclei, templates, and well, all the ones there. For example, I want to test only CVEs, the latest common vulnerabilities and exposures. Existing. Done. I hit enter. Then look, Nuclei starts running the tests. Here it is telling me, for example, that the engine is out of date. I'll show you how to update the engine. So look, it's only using the templates, 47 templates. It is using the templates added in the last update are 47, and the templates he loaded are 1,232 that he is testing. See? How do I update the templates to use the latest ones? I'm going to open another tab here, and all you have to say is Nuclei. Nuclei. Minus update. Hyphen templates. Nuclei update templates. And he's going to update the templates, if necessary. You could run it with sudo if you want. Then, you could run it with sudo in case you have some kind of theme with permissions, but not. And to update the engine, you would simply have to say Nuclei to sudo. Nuclei. Minus update. Without the templates. Minus update to update it. So look, here we are. Using because, well, there are no new updates for the engine. So we would be fine. So you update it, and so you update the templates. Here, as you see, look, it has already finished running, and it detects several places. Look, for example, here it shows us that this URL is vulnerable. There is a folder exposed. Then we could say open. Open link to look in Firefox to see what is there. So, well, here it shows us basically an XML with information. This information of the PHP project, because there is information probably exposed here. Look, data sources. There is information that is exposed. Is it okay? What else does it tell us here? Well, it detected a WAF. Look, tells us that the WAF is generic engines. And well, there are some client policies. There is a client access policies file that we could look at what it contains. Look, then it allows request by, oh god, HTTP request? And well, ready. Not all of them are terrible vulnerabilities, but well, is a tool that helps us to detect at least important vulnerabilities. You see, you can choose the templates that you're going to run, or run it by default, where you will have the normal parameters. And, well, here you will be able to see how it works. Here we already saw that with the CVEs. Look, it didn't find much. One of the enormous advantages of this tool is that it can save you a lot of time. For example, I think I have a file here that I created that is called targets or demo. Well, you can create a file. I think I called it test. Let's see, cat test.txt with different URLs, with the list of URLs that have authorization to test, or that are part, for example, of a bug bounty program where authorize researchers to scan them without you getting into legal trouble. So look, here I put a file called test.txt that has 2 URLs, right? So if I want to scan a file with many URLs, I simply have to tell it the nuclei, L, and the file already interprets it at once that contains the URLs, and then you give it the templates that you want, or you execute it by default. Then look, there it begins, and then it begins to detect, look, there it is, testing the test, and the scan my mmap. Look, the scan my mmap, it detects Apache, etc. So as you see, it is a supremely versatile tool from which you can create your own templates or download templates made by other people. There are many repositories of templates from GitHub that you could look at. Be careful. Check first before installing anything, because you don't know. If you're not careful, it could happen that you are installing something that is harmful, both for you and for him, for the target. Then look, there are several repositories that have templates. Look, this is the original, but look, this is another one in a collection, an image Shanov, a collection of templates. Let's look. Look, here there are several templates. Look, this is a list of all the templates that you can imagine of nuclei. Then well, here you can go looking and you can go deciding which templates could be interesting for you so that you can use them. These are of pure CVEs, of Apache, etc. So Nuclei, a vulnerability analysis tool, totally free, totally open source, is a community version, so I hope you find it interesting. Receive a hug. Very, very affectionate, and as always, please take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and never stop learning. See you all.